and it becomes toxic. That is very important. It becomes toxic because it happens to bring in certain patterns of behavior, which is, I would say, which are, I should say, dangerous, because it can let loose a lot of issues along with that. So that is why I would say it's a different kind of a thing that we need to identify. Let us now move on to the next. You will come to know more about it, because when you look at toxic masculinity, you will see that the emphasis is on, what we call as the conventional idea of toughness and aggression as a hallmark of what masculinity, and that is quite toxic. Toughness as part of, like, in all languages, in all societies, in all states, as well as our nation is concerned or a country is concerned, you have this concept: you should behave like a man, etc. So that toughness, the idea of aggression, it is all related to, it's a kind of a hallmark. And it is expected that men should show or display physical prowess, emotional kind of resilience, and assertiveness. Now, when you take each word, it's okay, fine. It's to have assertiveness is fine. But when it is only expected out of man, suddenly it becomes toxic. So physical prowess, fine, it is important, but it is not just meant for men. So the idea that men should display all that, physical prowess, and again, restraining emotions, emotional resilience, and assertiveness, again, that is all part of, the expected behavior as far as man is concerned. And then, as you all know, if you have a dispute, it is expected that, men should resort to aggression, and that is also, related to that. How should a man behave in a situation where you have this kind of a dispute? And you can easily understand, if you it is not just Shakespeare. You can go through the last history of 75 years of Indian films, or maybe Western films also. What is expected of that, and if a particular man is rather, discouraged to do all that, you call him as a man with a feminine quality. You attribute like that. He is a deviant kind of a behavior, because it is expected out of a situation that it is encultured and it is anticipated. So that at times becomes, toxic. Now, that is why I say like that. And again, men should conceal emotions like fear, sorrow, or vulnerability. Now, that is also very important. Like, in an emotional situation, they are not supposed to cry. They are not supposed to say, if they have some threat, they should not express, that they are afraid of all some kind of a consequence. They should not feel sorrow or being sorrowful on a given situation. They should never be vulnerable. That is what, because these are certain things which are generally taken as a set notion or a set standard. Now, that is also very interesting. If you are part of a system, and if you attribute a series of qualities to men like this, that shows why is it so like that. So this is one very very interesting. Let us go to the next, please. Now, as you can see, in the next slide, man, or men as such, they may feel compelled to present themselves as stoic and unemotional. I have already told you about that. So naturally, when you look into the media, for example, how is manhood designated, how it is being represented, how it is being projected? It is always connected with violence, of course, sex, then the status as such, and aggression. Now, when you look into media stories, if you look into social media, if you look into any form of representation as man is concerned, you have this. And too much of this, and that's what I'm trying to argue out, too much of this can be toxic. And that is why I'm bringing this element into the idea that is given in Shakespeare. So, as I said, it is a matter that has been attributed or created or represented through culture or because of culture, that the idea of manliness So where in which you have everything connected with strength. So means strength is everything. And if you are weak, if you are emotional, that shows that you are weak. That it becomes, it represents your weakness. So, for example, in films where you have a death scene, women tend to cry, but men try to restrain their emotions. It's a very common thing. Of course, there are now exceptions. Lots of exceptions can be pointed out, but generally that is a trend one can identify, and uh, sometimes this can be toxic. That's what I'm trying to argue out, especially in this world where we talk about unisex. Now, why you have this kind of representation in certain things? And if you look into web series, if you look into serials, if you look into other art forms, you have that. Or maybe in myth or cultural art forms, wherever you have grand representations of the masculine identity, or the man is represented as an all-powerful deity, whereas women are represented as coy, submissive, like that. That is one. That is a very important thing. And it is not new. So just see what is happening in the grammar book that you have taught in the classroom. The grammar book that we teach in the classroom, especially of 1950s, 60s, and 70s, what does a girl do in the family? She stitches, she waters the plants, she does gardening, she does the household duties. What is the man doing there? The boy uses the cycle or bicycle. He uses the motorbike, or all that. Even the grammar examples will the exercises that you make for changing from one tense to the other, or even in using the prepositions. You have girls represented like that, where they do soft things, and all the heavy duties, hard labor, or the idea of manliness represented through boys. It's all ingrained everywhere, even in the academic scenario. Now, why I'm telling you all this? Because what happened is, because of this element of enculturing, attributing a kind of a system into the boys' emotional, or what we call a psychological state. What happened is, they fail to create or form a meaningful emotional connect. And when they have real issues, mental health issues, they find it very difficult to even seek assistance. They can't go to a psychologist if they have real issues. So that way, this is something that we need to address. It's a very, that way it's a very important topic, not just because of Shakespeare, because of other issues also. Go to the next slide, please. Now, I have already next slide. As you can see that man, like masculinity or toxic masculinity. The man should always maintain control and exert power over others.
वो तो क्या पैसे लेके भाग गए थे पर वो बात तक उनका पीछा कर बचाने के चक्कर में
Pardon me. Can somebody switch off that?
Himani ma'am, please switch off your mic. Himani ma'am, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Now, so men should always maintain control and exert power over others. This is one idea that is generally associated with masculinity, toxic masculinity. And I have already told you, it reinforces traditional gender roles, expecting men to conform to certain stereotypical ideals of masculinity. And of course, as I have told you, there is something called assertion of authority through intimidation or acts of violence, or to prevail over others, to sustain dominations or dominance. It is there. So that way, I would suggest that this is a very, very, very interesting subject. It's a very important topic also for us. Now, from some academic studies, when you move to the next slide, you can see some very important inputs from academics. In the next slide, I have made references to certain authorities related to that. So, say in 1987, in the publication Gender and Power, R.W. Connell, he has referred to toxic masculinity like this. It's a more of what we call a specific form of other types of masculinity, such as hegemonic masculinity. Now, what happens with this? In toxic masculinity, it emphasizes the avoidance of femininity and the demonstration of aggression and anger. Whereas hegemonic masculinity is based on two ideas, means hierarchy of internal dominance and the domination of women. This is what R.W. Connell has said in 1987. This is one author that I'm referring to. When you go to the next slide, you can see another critic or author on that. It is T.A. Cooper's. Now, he in his article in the Journal of Clinical Psychology, published in 2005, he says, this type of masculinity is also different from other types of masculinity because it's detrimental or it has its own toxic effects on men. Toxic masculinity, that way, it encapsulates characteristics that are socially destructive, of course, such as aggression and the avoidance of femininity, from aspects that are socially constructive. That is what I have been telling you. This notion is created from the society or from among the members of the society. So now, if you want to be successful in life, or maybe a loyal friend or a family man, you are you are supposed to evolve like that. It has been constructed, socially constructed. That is another insight provided by Cooper's in 2005. And when you go to the next slide, you can see this is another in 2009 by Edwards, K.E. and Jones, S.R. Now, in this Journal of College Student Development, published in 2009, they say toxic masculinity actually encourages men to enact rigid set of expectations, behaviors, and perceptions of what is considered as manly. Very interesting. What is generally taken as a manly kind of a thing. So if they don't come under the definition of this kind of manliness, or those who don't fit into this strict definition of what is manly, they are generally ostracized and they are not considered as real men. So what happens is poor men, all of them are forced to take up certain roles which they don't even maybe personally inclined to do. So this idea forces and encourages men to behave in a certain way, or else they will forfeit their manliness. So that is also there. So the expectations are too high, by which some people are even forced to commit certain crimes because of that, because of this toxic nature of this expectation. So that is also a very important aspect. Now, going on to the next slide, you can see, now this is another in 2006, what happens with this stereotypical ideas about masculinity. Now, what will happen then? It will lead to certain ideas of femininity for women also. That is another interesting thing. So you have at one level ideas related to masculinity, at another level ideas related to femininity. So, and naturally that will happen. These two are systems which are artificially created and they will never interact meaningfully because these two are different kind of notions, and when they come together they are bound to fail. They don't interact meaningfully, and there can't be even a sense of harmony in relations. So that is why the writers like L.M. Ward, Meriwether, and Carruthers, they would say that it affects not just men but also women by enforcing and encouraging beliefs and attitude about stereotypical gender roles. So that is another concern as far as the sociologists or psychologists are concerned. So that way, this is a very important issue as far as toxic masculinity is concerned. Now, let us now move on to certain basic questions related to that. And what are those questions? Now, when you take up a literary text, so if you are trying to analyze a text from this particular perspective, now what are the fundamental questions that we need to ask? First question is, how frequently does toxic masculinity occur in literary text? Do you find anything like this? How frequently do they come? And how frequently do characters demonstrate aggression? Maybe it can be physical aggression or expression of anger or whatever it be. In literatures, how frequently that sense of aggression is expressed. And again, next question is how frequently do male characters demonstrate aggression compared to female characters? That is another thing that we can look into when we analyze a literary text from the concept of or from the level of toxic masculinity. Another thing is how frequently do male characters express anger about gender stereotypical objects compared to female characters. Now that is also there. How frequently do they express the anger related to that? Next one is how does the intensity of anger compare between male and female characters? Now, please note all these questions may not come under the purview of one text or one author, but you can see some of these questions are important when you analyze a text from the perspective of toxic masculinity. Then another is how frequently do characters demonstrate an avoidance of femininity in literary text? That's also there, because it can be something like mockery of femininity, or it can be suppression of vulnerable emotions, or maybe intolerance of male homosexuality. Anything that is available in a literary text, and how frequently do characters demonstrate? Now this is interesting. It is very much there in Hamlet, for example. Then how frequently do male characters demonstrate an avoidance of femininity compared to female characters? So as I told you, there are two levels, masculinity as well as femininity, and the expectations that come out of these two situations. Whether you can call it stereotypical situations or maybe those who are socially constructed. Now, how frequently do male characters suppress vulnerable emotions about gender stereotypical objects? As I told you, this question can be put into various situations. And the last one is how does the intensity of the suppressed emotions compare between male and female characters? So all these can be taken up for analysis if you are interested, and one can identify the various domains which are applicable in the given literary text, and you can use the appropriate theory to identify the behavior and the conduct of a given character in the given situation of the text. So these are just possibilities. So it is not a matter of just correlating a few characteristics of toxic like masculinity with that of Shakespeare. It implies lot of sub questions, and I'm actually listing out a few. Of course there are many, but these are some of the sub questions that can be taken up for discussion. So when you move to the next slide, I have summarized some of the key features. So I have listed out a few which you have already seen as part of discussion. It can be dominance, it can be misogyny, it can be aggression, it can be physical prowess, it can be emotional restraint, it can be intimidation, anything. And when you look into the text like Hamlet, you will find almost all in this given slide. I'll come to that soon when I move on to Hamlet as such. In the next case, we'll begin from instances of Shakespeare, and I'll begin with Hamlet. And when I begin with Hamlet, I have used you know the scene there. In that very particular way, we have the death of Ophelia. You have that, So we'll look into that in detail in the next few slides. As far as Hamlet is concerned, you have this obsession with revenge, the treatment of Ophelia, how she is treated in that particular play, and then the suppression of emotion as far as Hamlet is concerned. I think many characters do that, and the distrust of female sexuality. Now, all these come into play in the given text. And when you look into the text from the Hamlet's perspective, see, Hamlet's entire quest for revenge against his uncle Claudius, because it is all driven because of this social expectation of masculinity. The society expects that being a man, it is his duty to take revenge on Claudius. And naturally, he feels compelled to take revenge on his father's murderer or on Claudius so that he can uphold his honor and fulfill his duty as a son. So revenge, as you all know, even not just Shakespeare, throughout the literary series of literary productions, be it fiction, be it cinema, revenge is a common thing, especially revenge of one's father's death. You know, you have this concept that if you are a man, if you are a son born to your father, it is his duty, your bound duty as far as a son is concerned, to take revenge. So that notion is perpetuated, that element is perpetuated by the society's notion of how to deal with a given situation. So this obsession actually consumes him, leading to, as you all know, destructive behavior. Ultimately, it kills so many people. It kills so many people, and at the end of the play, you have only dead bodies there. And in the next slide, I have already told you, you can see from his quote, the famous quote, "To be or not to be." And when you look into that, when you read closely that quote, "To be or not to be," that is a question. Whether it's nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles. So what should I do now? That is his question. There is this idea of indecision, procrastination. You know all those words generally related. So his indecision, that is being reflected here. Why is that problem coming up as far as this young man is concerned? Hamlet is 30. He's not very young. He's 30 now. So he believes that it is his duty to take revenge, but at the same time he has his own problems. So his indecision reflects the pressure to conform to traditional masculine ideals of stoicism, and because he has to take up that all the pain into himself and to take revenge on others. That is his idea. And when we go to the next slide, his treatment of Ophelia, his love interest, and that is also manipulative and cruel because he doesn't believe in anybody around. When you look into the play, you can see that. He berates her, makes fun of her. I have already mentioned that in the beginning. He berates her, accuses her of dishonesty, rejects her. And naturally, she doesn't know what is happening to herself. In the sense, she becomes really mad. So that contributes to her emotional distress. And his behavior, in a way, reflects that sense of superiority, because she becomes a commodity as far as Hamlet is concerned. Because there is always this a societal kind of feeling that you are superior to women. So that toxic feeling actually destroys their relationship. Now, throughout the play, this struggle is you can see that it is evident. There is this suppression of grief regarding his father's death, his anger towards Claudius. Now, all those are internalized, not fully expressed. And he expresses that in the chamber of his mother. That is also there when he takes up the two pictures. Look at this. This is my father, and look at this other man. So he makes a comparison, and you can see how violently he believes. That is why she screams, and then Polonius, who is hiding behind the curtain, gets murdered. Now that is there. At one level he represses, and at one level he opens. There is no control over his behavior as such. And that is also evident, as I have told, treatment towards Gertrude and his mother and Ophelia. Because he considers women as objects of either desire or manipulation. That is one. Maybe for the sake of sexual drive, or maybe towards his satisfaction of that, or maybe manipulating their mind. That is also there. He plays with Ophelia because of that. He knew that Ophelia is a pawn in the hands of the conspiracy team. So he plays with her purposefully. He plays with Polonius, of course. But at the same time, this this kind of a behavior, this distrust that is very important of female sexuality is there, and again, that is also a reflection of what societal anxieties about women's power and autonomy. That is also there in the play. So that actually finds a lot of. So let me when I told you at the beginning itself, and I showed you the key features. You have dominance, you have misogyny, because Hamlet he has total revulsion towards mankind, but he has become toxic, as well as I would say I would call it like that, internalized, in the sense he doesn't believe anyone. He is aggression towards the end, and he prepares for a physical fight. And even when you see towards the end, when Ophelia was being buried, he had a sword fight with Laertes, and you have at times emotional restraint. At the beginning of the play, you have Hamlet wearing that black cloth, because of mourning, and of course there is a lot of intimidation there. So when you look into the key features of toxic masculinity, Hamlet is a clear representative of that. That way one can read Hamlet in a different perspective. And when you move on to Othello, of course, we all know what happens in that. I'm sure you are all ready for that also. And you have jealousy, suspicion, as far as Othello is concerned, is possessiveness. That is also there. Too much of possessiveness is also toxic. That is also there, So when a husband is too caring about his wife, is too possessive about his wife, that becomes in a way toxic as far as the relation is concerned. And you have manipulation, Iago's manipulation, and then you have Brabantio's reaction to Desdemona's marriage. These are some instances where I would like to comment on that. And finally, Emilia's submission to the societal norms. Now, let us begin with Othello's jealousy. That is a central theme, and that is actually fueled by toxic masculinity. So throughout the play, you especially after the second act, you have this building up of that particular theme. Actually, Iago has his own problems. Iago believes that there is some clandestine relation between his wife and Othello. That is also there, but he creates another kind of a setting where in which he grooms, he manipulates, by which Othello plays into the hand of Iago, and then is totally under the control of that particular character. So he feels, Othello generally feels entitled to control and possess Desdemona, and you don't see any equality in their relationship, as far as when you look into the language that they use towards the middle of the play or towards the end of the play. You can see that there is no equality as far as the norms of language is concerned. Desdemona is highly submissive, whereas the sense of coercion, the sense of abuse that you find in the language of Othello, you can easily read that. So it becomes unequal as far as the expression is concerned. Then his inability to trust her, his violent reactions, all those naturally lead to the ultimate tragedy. And Iago, of course, the villain there, but he is also a kind of, he embodies toxic masculinity. Actually, he preys on the sense of insecurity that Othello has about his race, the identity of being black, and his masculinity, and he cleverly exploits those things against Desdemona. That is what, because he has his own agenda as far as abusing of Desdemona is concerned, because he knows. Because in a way it has actually affected his kind of a promotion, etc., which we all know the story there. But there are the desire is actually part of his to achieve power, to take revenge, all that. So that is why he comes up with the idea of manipulation. Similarly, as you can see there, actually he makes use of this particular dialogue to manipulate Othello. You can see that. Oh, beware, my lord, of jealousy. That is interesting. Actually, he manipulates, he implants jealousy, but he says, oh, beware, my lord, of jealousy. It is the green-eyed monster which doth mock the meat it feeds on. That is what he says. So look at that. Actually, he is implanting that. At the same time, he says, beware, don't get trapped into that. He cautions Othello. So actually, he plants seeds of doubt and jealousy into Othello's mind. That is what I would like to share. As far as and that creates a sense of insecurity in the mind of Othello regarding his masculinity and his kind of relationship with Desdemona. So Iago's manipulation, that's what I said, because that Othello believes that he'll become a cuckold. That is what he'll be cuckolded, and that actually he becomes irrational, he becomes rash, he becomes too jealous, and ultimately ending up in violence. And then the classic dialogue by Brabantio, Desdemona's father. He is also, remember, he has taken care of his daughter, and now at the time of marriage, he believes that Desdemona was his property. And then when he understands that he has been betrayed by Desdemona by marrying Othello without his consent, of course, he becomes angry, and that is expressed by that crucial dialogue that, of course, he has cheated me, and once later on she will cheat you also. That kind of dialogue, it is all because of this, the kind of frustration on the part of a toxic father. It means mind with that kind of toxic element. And this character, Emilia, Iago's wife, that is also a problem. That is also a case where you have a woman grappling with toxic masculinity, because she is living in a patriarchal society where it's very common. She has to conform to certain societal expectations of women. So she obediently follows her husband's instruction. So later on, when she challenges that, she becomes a victim. As you know the story there, So this is all about Othello. And when we move to Macbeth, you have this major concepts like Macbeth's ambition. Of course, overvaulting ambition. I'm sure all of you have read about that, aware of that. Macbeth's ambition and thirst for power, and Lady Macbeth's manipulation of Macbeth, and Macbeth's suppression of emotion, and Macbeth's treatment of his adversaries. When you look into that, you will find elements of toxic masculinity. So actually his ambition drives him to commit this heinous act. Actually, Duncan is almost like a father figure, but he wants to seize the throne. So his pursuit, the relentless pursuit of power, to take control, to have dominance over others, and that is also a symbol of toxic masculinity. That is one of the reasons for his downfall. And along with that, in the next slide, as you can see, Lady Macbeth, in this case, plays a very crucial role by encouraging him to go for violent actions. So for that, to disturb him, to rake up his sense of masculinity, he actually questions it. She questions Macbeth's masculinity, so that out of that he actually revolts against the contemporary sovereign ruler Duncan. So that manipulation, that emotional blackmail, that sense of coercion that you find for committing the heinous murder, actually Lady Macbeth follows or perpetuates the societal expectation of what a man should do according to that convention. So for that sake, but once the murder has been committed later on, as you all know, the tragedy affects both. Macbeth, I would say, goes out of control, he becomes insensitive, and Lady Macbeth loses her mind. So that is very important things. And as you can see that in the famous dialogue, Lady Macbeth says, "Glamis thou art and cawda, and shall be what thou art promised. Yet do I fear thy nature, It is too full of the milk of human kindness. That's a very, very significant and a very, I should say, oft quoted word. Full of the milk of human kindness. Which has the nearest way. So that is the crucial kind, because you're not supposed to be like that, that kindness, the kind of milk of human kindness. You're not supposed to be like. You're a soldier. You're a brave soldier. You should take up and you should catch the opportunity, grab the opportunity, and then become aggressive, kill the guards, take control over the situation, kill Dunk, murder Duncan, etc. On all these are suggested because of that. She actually prompts him to do that. It's a very important situation. So that and throughout the play, Macbeth, he cannot even confess his emotions. He suppresses that, his guilt, and there is no sense of remorse, especially related to the murder of the king. And then, as you can see, so as you can see there, his emotional repression, that is also a part of what the expectation, social expectation, as far as toxic masculinity is concerned. So that is one idea related to Macbeth. And as you all know, his treatment of Banquo and Macduff, his family. Now all those, those qualities which are expected to be positive converts itself into negative, and Macbeth, in a way, destroy himself. So that is the destructive power of or nature of toxic masculinity. And towards the end, we have this the last play coming up, that is King Lear. King Lear, of course, he is old. He has his own pride and stubbornness, and the way that he treats women, or rather, the male characters in the play treat women. And there is one character's really wise, wicked, Edmund, and his ambition and betrayal. That is also taken. That can also be taken as the instances of toxic masculinity. And King Lear's problem was that he expected what? Total loyalty from his daughters. He loved Cordelia the most, but she was the one who rejected, as I said at the beginning of the play, to express her emotions, and that actually gets into trouble as far as both King Lear and Cordelia in a way, and that shows that how vulnerable King Lear is as far as identifying his pitfall, his hamartia, or his major problem that he should have understood. And that is a tragic flaw, as you all know. And that later on created the entire tragedy. And as you all know, throughout the play in King Lear, just as in Hamlet, just as in Othello, women become almost like a disposable object. Cordelia is sent off as an object because King Lear doesn't want her anymore as a daughter. So that kind of toxic feeling, you'll find that. Similarly, you can see that the treatment of Gloucester's treatment of Edmund's mother. That is why Edmund becomes rather too wicked about that. As you all know, it's an illegitimate offspring. So that is why Edmund becomes an embodiment of toxic masculinity, because he wants to betray his family so that he can go up in life. And for that sake, actually, you can see that he plays with these two women, the two daughters, the two daughters of King Lear, Goneril as well as Regan. So that way he has his own kind of private affair with these two. And Goneril says, as you can see there again, that metaphor is almost the same. This milky gentleness and course of yours, though I condemn not, yet under pardon, you are much more tasked for want of wisdom than praised for harmful mildness. Now, this is what Goneril has to say for her husband Albany, because she says Albany is weak, he is not assertive. So you have to be more at task. For want of wisdom, you are not aggressive enough to catch the or grab the opportunity there. That is what Goneril would say. So the act of Goneril and Regan, as you can see, they are in a way uh, like manipulative, and they also perpetuate the gender dynamics. That is what I would like to emphasize here. They are also part of that. They become part of that. Now, these are the 4 plays as far as the major. Uh, Towards the end, I would like to tell you one more 2 things, because it is not that you have this 4 plays as the only representative. You can find similar toxic masculinity in, as you all know, evident. See, for example, a play like Taming of the Shrew, as you can see, one of the comedies there, and in some of the plays in Coriolanus, you have that. So that way you have this toxic masculinity being represented in Shakespeare different ways, but I have taken the 4 because they are generally well known. People can easily correlate, people can easily understand, like they can easily connect. That is why I have taken this topic for this particular session. And as a matter of conclusion, as far as this discussion is concerned, I have already stated at the beginning, toxic masculinity is something that has been constructed by the society. It is a phenomenon socially constructed, and these expectations, norms are perpetuated over a long period of time. So in the contemporary sensibility, we need to understand that the old gender roles and expectations may not work and should not work, because these are concerns that we need to address. And as I have told you, this can actually be detrimental not to women but also to men. It can have detrimental effects on both men and women, because as you all know, gender-based violence, mental health challenges, and again, you don't grow. It means, in the sense, the person with that kind of a toxic feeling, he may not grow enough, he may not be like appropriate enough to behave positively in a society, in the contemporary society. That is why I would say this topic is very, very significant. And again, the kind of negative male stereotypes. When you have that, they pressure men into acting in ways that may conflict with the contemporary values, that may shame, and because shame men who show feminine traits and threaten men with losing their manhood. So that is one issue that we need to understand here. So these are generally taken as the other extreme opposite, feminine traits or losing their manhood. All because of that, people go to the other extreme, means, in the sense, showing extreme violence. And this particular psychologist and writer, Sandra Ben, way back in 1970s, what she has suggested is men and women should become more androgynous. And what she has identified and found is that, people with a mix of positive masculine and feminine psychological traits, both masculine and feminine, they are more flexible, competent, and mentally healthy, rather than the stereotypical masculine and feminine counterparts. So it's always a good thing to have these 2 traits coming together, masculine and feminine psychological traits. And by, say, like, when you eliminate those, the toxic masculinity, so that helps, in both men and women. So they don't feel depressed, they don't find themselves isolated. That way, it's a positive kind of a thing. Another thing that I would like to conclude, and as part of conclusion, is that, so we need to dismantle the societal expectation. So that dismantling of the toxic masculinity, which involves, of course, promoting healthier, more inclusive concept of masculinity. And then, if you bring in that feeling among people, what will happen is both genders, and of course, we have this not just two genders now, even there is alternative gender coming up, Mr. MS, MR, and MX. Now, in this particular situation, it is important to have enough space for all to express themselves fully, meaningfully in a society, by which it becomes more interactive and inclusive. So that way one can reduce this concept of, or like go against the idea of toxic masculinity. So this is what I would like to share with you, and let me thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. And of course, to, I would like to take up a few questions if time permits, and then we can wind up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It was indeed a very interesting and enlightening lecture. A very complex subject made easy by Dr. Murali Krishnan. Now, by quoting examples from his tragedies, he justified the toxicity in male characters of the four tragedies. Um, according to Sir, toxic masculinity encourages men to enact a rigid sets of expectations, behaviors, and perceptions of what is considered manly, which affects not only men but also women by enforcing and encouraging beliefs and attitudes about stereotypical mindsets of the society. Sir also dealt with the psychological aspect of the toxic behavior and how we can actually overcome this. So it was a very insightful lecture, and I'm sure the participants would have gained a lot from it. And now, as Sir said, now if there are any questions, I would like to invite them. So, any questions from the participants?
Now the forum is open. Participants are most welcome to ask questions if they have any questions. Excellent lecture, sir. It was really very scintillating, very informative, very interesting, I would say rather, that you very well wrapped up everything so well. Thank you so much, sir, for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I would not be actually surprised if there are no questions, because it was very well explained, very clearly put forward. So I don't think there are any questions. We'll wait.
No, I don't want to. I don't want to like prolong the lecture, because it's a beautiful Saturday. Even though the climate is climate is slightly hot, but
Yes, sir.
yeah, but I don't want to destroy their weekend. But if there are one or two comments, also, of course, I have read the chat box. But if you have anything to ask, we can have a small discussion. Now, what I would like to, I think we are all going through this particular phase in life, where in which this issue, even though I have discussed this in terms of Shakespeare, it's related to our life. It's like everyday life. We'll see, we can see around such things happening. So this kind of sensibility, if the teachers here in the panel can take them to they are, of course, they are doing it, I know, in a way, or directly or indirectly, into the classroom situation, that will be fine, because that will take a lot of pressure out of your students. They'll get a sense of democracy working out in the classroom. It will become a more of a democratic environment.
Yes, sir. We'll surely do that.
Thank you.
So I don't think there are any questions. So let's move on to the formal proposal of vote of thanks. Now, at the outset, I would like to thank the President of Shakespeare'S Society of Central India, Dr. Pranati Chakrabarti, whose brainchild is this lecture series. I would also like to thank the active and vibrant Secretary of Shakespeare Society of Central India, Dr. Usha Sakure, whose endless efforts made this certificate course a reality. I would also like to thank the principals of the organizing colleges, Dr. Urmila Dabir, Dr. Prashant Shelke, Dr. Vikas Domne, and Dr. Mohan Nagrale for coming together for the benefit of the participants. Thanks is also due to the coordinators, Dr. Mahadvi Moral, Dr. Veena Joseph, Dr. Kartik Panikar, and Dr. Manjushri Deshpande who will herself be delivering a lecture tomorrow. For all their sincere efforts you have made to carry on this lecture series smoothly. I'm grateful to the technicians too, without whose support this series would be impossible. Thank you all once again till we meet again tomorrow at the same time to witness Shakespearean sonnets, structure and form by none other than Dr. Manjushri Sardeshpande. So
So
thank you all.
thank you all,
Yeah, thank.
thank you for the opportunity for interacting with you. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank you
thank
so
you,
much,
sir. Thank you
everybody.
so
Thank you,
much.
sir. Thank you, Shamam. Thank you, Dipti ma'am. You were really amazing. Good. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
everybody.
Okay. Yeah.